Finding a good smartphone these days for $600 is quite easy, but what if we told you only needed to spend $300 for a good flagship tier device? I'm Nick Gray from Phandroid, and this is our review of the Meizu MX6. For $300, you're not going to get a phone with a spec sheet that competes with the Samsung Galaxy S7 or the new Pixel. But the MX6 does sport a Helio X20 processor, 4GB of RAM, 32GB of internal storage, a 5.5-inch 1080p display, 12-megapixel rear sensor, and a 5-megapixel front-facing sensor. And you also get a 3060 mAh battery. You'd be forgiven if you couldn't pick out the Meizu's MX6 from a lineup. The phone is indistinguishable from dozens of other smartphones which sport aluminum bodies and 2.5D glass panels on the front. The only real unique design element on the MX6 is the antenna lines, which have a curve as they reach the edge of the device. The front of the phone is dominated by its 5.5-inch display and clickable Samsung-esque home button and fingerprint scanner. The single speaker is located along the bottom edge next to the phone's USB Type-C charging port and 3.5mm headphone jack. While the MX6 does look quite generic, it's actually quite comfortable to hold. The curved edges on the side allow the phone to nestle into your hand quite nicely, and the thin bezels around the display give the phone a smaller footprint than most other phones with a 5.5-inch display. If you like stock Android, you probably won't like Meizu's Flyme UI, which draws a lot of inspiration from iOS. Fortunately, the UI is flat and doesn't force rounded corners or weird backgrounds on all your app icons. Compared to Huawei's Emotion UI, Flyme is dramatically sparse and doesn't have 1001 different customization options. You do get themes to customize the icons, widgets, and stock apps, but that's basically it. One thing we do need to point out is that the MX6 does not come with the Play Store or any of Google's services pre-installed. Meizu does include a Google Services installer on the device, which seamlessly downloads the Google Play Store, and from there you can download all the Google apps that you want. We just wish it wasn't an additional step that you have to jump through to get your phone set up. The software feature which sets the phone apart from other Android devices is its unique gesture and button interactions used for navigation and multitasking. Since the phone doesn't use on-screen or capacitive navigation buttons, recent apps are accessed by swiping up from the bottom of the display. A simple tap to the home button mimics the functionality of the back button. Pressing the home button takes you back to the home screen, but you can also press and hold the button to turn off the display. Android users in the US and Europe typically know what to expect when they pick up a phone running on a Qualcomm processor. But that's not the case when you give them a phone that's running on one of MediaTek's chips. To give you a bit of context, performance on the MediaTek MT6797 Helio X20 falls somewhere between the Snapdragon 810 and the 820. Meizu's MX6 won't be winning any speed races when paired up against the Samsung Galaxy S7, the LG G5, or even the brand new Pixel. But it doesn't have any issues playing the most taxing 3D games currently available for Android. Meizu's also done a good job with RAM management. With the MX6, you can easily jump out of a game to reply to a text message, switch over to Twitter for a minute, and then jump back into the game and pick up exactly where you left off. Camera performance on the MX6 is good, but it's actually a step or two below what you would get on other flagship devices that sell for $600 or more. The camera software itself is responsive, with vibrant and crisp images, and the phase detect autofocus can lock onto a subject nearly instantaneously. But things take a turn for the worse when the lighting gets dim. In low light, the Meizu has a hard time focusing, and the sensor doesn't pull in as much light as other flagship devices do. Since the phone doesn't include optical image stabilization, you'll also be forced to take multiple pictures in low light scenarios, just to make sure that you don't end up with a blurry shot. The MX6 does make up a little bit of ground with its 5-megapixel front-facing camera. The shots turn out pretty well, but we would have appreciated a slightly wider lens. And that brings us to battery life. The 3060 mAh battery of the MX6 is a little bit smaller than what you would expect with a phone with a 5.5-inch display. That being said, this phone is a battery champ. After 14 hours of heavy use on a typical day, we usually had 20% battery life when we plugged it in at night. If you're looking for a cheaper alternative to the Samsung Galaxy S7, the HTC 10, or even the LG G5, the MX6 really isn't the phone for you. But it's not a bad phone, not by a long shot. The camera and performance are good, and the design of the phone is very appealing. It does look a little bit like an HTC and iPhone knockoff, but that's par for the course these days with metal phones. If you only have $300 to spend on a new smartphone, we don't see any reason why the MX6 from Meizu shouldn't be at the top of your list.